Sally-Shakti, your visionary writing guide, and welcome to Tarot and Astrology for Visionary Writers from Monday the 18th to Sunday the 24th of September 2023. And yeah, thanks for being here. This video is going to be a short one due to time constraints for me recording this today. And it's also, I'm feeling, going to be very gentle and introspective. And I guess partly that's, for me personally, that's the invitation of the arrival of my bleed. That's how I'm feeling in myself energetically. But I'm feeling also this as a seasonal and astrological and energetic invitation that we might be feeling and experiencing collectively. The biggest energy this week, the big energy this week, is the autumn equinox and the sun entering into the sign of Libra on Saturday, the 23rd of September here in the British Isles. It's a time of rebalancing. The Libra equinox brings us back into balance, and also as a consequence of that shows us what's out of balance in our lives and what we can harmonize by bringing back into balance. So often I find around the March, the Aries and the Libra equinoxes, those energetic imbalances coming to the surface or showing me in my life where I'm out of balance and what needs to be brought back into realignment. Here in the Northern Hemisphere, we are entering into the autumn equinox, the dark half of the year. We're going to travel through that gateway. Libra is related to the tarot card, the energy of justice, that balancing in the scales, that weighing in the scales. And it's a really karmic sense of justice, and it's a karmic sense of energetically being a portal to the underworld. We have Libra, and then we enter into Scorpio, and we're really in the dark season of the year. Libra is the portal, the entryway into the dark season, that kind of karmic waypoint. In fact, we had quite a wild storm here overnight and during the day yesterday. And in my kind of half sleeping, half waking state, I was sensing into the storm, particularly when it was right overhead and the thunder and the lightning were happening more or less simultaneously, or I was experiencing them more or less simultaneously. I really sensed that storm as being a portal for the removal from the Earth's energy field of what is no longer in alignment, for carrying forward into the new higher frequency co-creation that we are participating in and helping to birth through our practices and our processes as visionary writers and creatives. And the equinox really is that energy of coming into alignment. Can be disruptive. It can be a force for disruption, where we see what's out of alignment and we're brought back into balance, or we are invited to bring ourselves back into balance. There can be quite an unbalanced energy around the equinox as we recalibrate into the new season. And as we in the Northern Hemisphere are entering the dark half of the year, the dark seasons of the year, we're really learning again to slow down. We're recalibrating to a slower pace, to already there being visibly less light during the day, less hours of daylight. The night almost now is beginning to become more than the day, and that will obviously balance at the equinox and then begin to increase. So we are invited inwards, we're invited into that inner journey. And last week I mentioned that I was personally exploring storytelling structure and connecting with the structure of the heroine's journey. And I've been listening to a podcast this week called The Heroine's Journey. And I can't remember the two presenters' names, two Spanish women who've presented the podcast, first in Spanish and then in English. And their structure of the seasons, they structure the heroine's journey around the journey of the seasons, and I really resonate with that. But for me personally, I sense a different alignment than they have made, although their alignment makes sense to me, with the heroine's journey being starting in the spring and working through the wheel of the year, or starting at the new moon and working through the cycle of the monthly lunation. For me personally, I got a sense when I was feeling into how does that seasonal alignment fit with the heroine's journey for me personally. I got a sense of why my Celtic ancestors began their year at Samhain, which had never really made sense to me before. I didn't understand why they would begin the year at Samhain when that was the time when we were going inwards. I always, my personal practice has been to begin the year at Imbolc when we're rising out and rising into our rebirth. What I understood from the heroine's journey and the way that I interpreted that energetically for myself in relation to the seasons and the cycles was that the heroine's journey begins with the disconnection from ourselves, from who we truly are, and then moves us into disconnection from the world that has created the conditions for us to be out of alignment with ourselves. And the heroine's journey, as many people reflect on in their exploring of this structure, the heroine's journey is the journey into the darkness, whereas the hero's journey tends to be presented more as a linear kind of solar journey. The heroine's journey is a lunar journey into the darkness, and it begins with the descent. It begins with that death and rebirth process. Many other people are writing and teaching on this as well. I'm thinking of Carly Mountain's book, Descent and Rising, for example, as a really strong and clear example of how that heroine's journey maps into our contemporary lives, and she tells contemporary stories of women, and also into the mythology of Inanna, that descent and rising of the Venus through her rebirth as the first the evening and then the morning star, which I'll talk about again in a moment. But we have this kind of mythological, archetypal, and astrological, and energetic, and seasonal map that and lunar and cyclical map that kind of maps internally for me the heroine's journey. Why I could never quite make sense of narrative structure until that piece dropped in. And for me now, I'm connecting that with why my Celtic land-based ancestors here in the British Isles began their year at Samhain, because the beginning of the journey is the descent into darkness. The beginning of the journey is separation from the world, descending into darkness, moving through our own death, and then into the rebirth and into the integration, and then communicating that story with others, sharing the gifts and the wisdom and the healing that we've received through our own journey into the darkness with others. And we do this collectively. It's of collective benefit, and we're doing it together. So for me, this as we now begin to transition into the darker half of the year, I'm getting a sense of perhaps even that kind of back to school feeling that I get around September, and that's starting to intensify now that we're moving into the later half of September. It's a real energetic focus, but it's also a restlessness of needing to do something, needing to complete something, needing things to change, needing to put things in place so that I can move into that death and rebirth and recalibration that will take me through the next cycle of the year. And perhaps I'm beginning to think about that next cycle actually starting almost 6 months earlier than I originally and have been habitually practicing. So what does that look like, and how does that feel, and what does that mean? So I want to reflect that we have collectively been through this process very recently with the rebirth of Venus and the Venus conjunction, the Venus star point, when Venus was conjunct the Sun at 20 degrees of Leo back at the end of August, or mid to late August. What I felt and what I mentioned in last week's video was that early last week, when the moon was in Leo, very close to Venus, and I could see that in the sky, in the sort of dawn sky before the sun rose, I was able to see Venus and the moon very close and traveling together through the sky in Leo. And those few days when, so let's say Monday, Tuesday into Wednesday, into the early hours of Wednesday, that restlessness for me and that sense of frustration was at a peak. I was feeling the moon bringing the Venus rebirth really strongly into my own personal energy field. Now, Venus works with all of us personally. She is a personal planet. Her rebirth will affect us all. But I could feel that closeness, the moon being so close to Venus, and the moon being our closest astrological body that we feel most strongly in our own energy fields. I could really feel the moon bringing that Venus rebirth into my personal energy field, and this energetic restlessness, this energetic frustration. Something is changing. I didn't know what it was. I have a clearer sense now, but at the time, I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what was realigning and rebirthing, but something definitely was. And as the moon then moved closer towards the sun in Virgo, and became first of all the dark moon, so the moon entering into her death to become conjunct with the sun, there was a peak for me of frustration and restlessness, knowing that something had to change, something had to be released in order to create space for the rebirth and for the new creative energies that are wanting to come through very strongly. So on the eve of the new moon, so on the dark moon itself, in the energy of the moon's death, I really journaled with that and created a ritual around that, releasing what was needing to be released, and not necessarily knowing what that was consciously, but creating the ritual and the journaling opportunity to allow whatever needed to be released. And then as the moon herself was reborn with the new moon in Virgo, and Mercury also within a few hours, within hours of that, went direct, I began to notice more clarity, more sense of new direction, some things falling away, with space for new creations to emerge. And I'm mentioning that because I'm kind of reflecting on this wider energetic moment that I feel that we're in between the Venus rebirth, the new moon in Virgo. Now we have the autumn equinox, a time of deep and intense karmic rebalancing. And then we're moving into the dark half of the year. And I can already begin to feel in my energy field the approach of eclipse season. So we have the Libra new moon eclipse on the 14th of October. This will be the first Libra eclipse that we've had in a number of years. Rebalancing, karmically rebalancing in those areas of our lives. And then we have the Taurus full moon eclipse on the 28th of October. So as we move through Libra and then into Scorpio season, we will be experiencing eclipse season through that dark time of the year. And I'm beginning already to feel this approach in my energy field. Things are changing. You know, we feel this often in the autumn. The season is changing. The season is visibly changing. The energy, the world around us is changing, but the world within is changing too, irrevocably, because the astrology is driving that that realignment, that recalibration. So you may be sensing into your visionary writing and creative practice that something needs to change, something new wants to be birthed through you creatively, that has a real power and momentum and purpose to it. You may have glimpses of what that is. You may still not quite be clear. Remember, we've just had Mercury retrograde, and we have now Jupiter retrograde in the same degrees of Taurus where Mercury was retrograde earlier this year. We still have Saturn retrograde in Pisces, which was opposite to those Virgo energies that we were experiencing, that we have been experiencing. Perhaps we're not quite yet in the energy of forward momentum, especially as we do enter the dark half of the year. But perhaps we are preparing to release and let go what we must surrender and die to, what is no longer in alignment with the vibrational frequency that we will be co-creating with as we move forward through our own rebirth. So this time feels potent energetically for deep inner self-inquiry. Journaling is obviously a great support and friend for that process. And for perhaps deep creative transformation with your visionary writing or creative practice, and a stronger sense of purpose coming through with what is ready to be born through you, perhaps beginning now, perhaps beginning as we move into our rebirth with the solar year in a few months' time. So I guess that's really what I want to reflect on in this week's video. These bigger reflective energies that are calling us into deep self-inquiry and deep transformation. And if there is something really potently creative that's wanting to be birthed through you, I really encourage you to journal with that and listen to that and discover what practical steps you can take towards it, which might feel like small steps initially. But when we begin to take the steps towards the higher vision of our dreams, the universe also steps and walks towards us to meet us. And those steps gain momentum and impact because it's through showing commitment to where we want to go that we begin to magnetize ourselves towards it and magnetize that reality towards ourselves. So if there is some vision that you're glimpsing and you're not quite sure how to manifest it, now is a really great time to go within, to do that inner inquiry work through your journaling, and to begin perhaps to map out what are some initial concrete practical steps that you can take towards that path, towards that vision. And it might not be the time to be taking steps right now. That's something to feel into energetically. But I do feel like when we make the commitment and we begin to move in that direction, we realign and we reorient our lives in a new direction. We're already beginning to create the frequency that will potentize and magnetize and manifest that new reality. This feels very potent at this time of entering into the darker half of the year, as we enter into the liminal and we enter into the womb, the death space. Initially the womb space, we enter into the time of infinite possibilities, that we can begin to dream with a new vision. So which of our archetypes in the narrative of the tarot, the story of the tarot, is here to illuminate and support our journeys of deep inner inquiry and perhaps realignment, recalibration, and transformation this week, as we journey towards and enter into and pass through the portal of the equinox as the sun enters Libra. It's the Knight of Swords reversed. So that is, it just looks like a mess. It's the Knight of Swords reversed. That is really, for me, a very clear and strong invitation not to be rushing in with the head in this week, allowing ourselves the time for deep inner reflection, deep inner inquiry, journaling, breathing, body-based processes, somatic inquiry, energetic healing, coming back down into the body, coming back down into the heart, and not rushing in with quick decisions from the head. This is a time to slow down. It's a time to calm the mind, calm our thinking, get our pen onto the page, and listen to our bodies, listen deep within, as we are moving through this very deep and powerful and potent and karmic time of recalibration, preparing to let go of what we need to surrender so that we may enter into our own symbolic death as we reach into the dark part of the cycle, which will enable us then to recalibrate and realign for a more potent, more fully vibrant and cosmically aligned rebirth, when it is time for that rebirth to begin. So thank you so much for being here with me today. I will be running a workshop on Thursday, the 28th of September. That is just before the Aries full moon. It's a free class for visionary writers who are ready to release writer's block and find your visionary writing voice. That is a 1.25 hour free online class for you to join. And I will pin the registration link for that into the comments below. So please do join me and sign up for that if you would like to. I'd love to see you there. It'd be really good to see some more of your faces. You get to see a lot of mine. And yeah, please feel free to join me in that class, and we will journey with the energy of the Aries full moon as we move more potently into our writing practice and visionary writing and creative practice. So thank you so much for being here. I look forward to seeing you again soon, and I'm sending you lots of love.